My cheating ex-wife falsely accused me of SA, and I even got arrested. Now my family wants to make up after disowning me. My father somehow found me after disowning me. What should I do? I'm using a throwaway account for this because it's something I don't like thinking about too much. I can give you a little more detail about what happened and why it matters so much to me. My ex-girlfriend cheated on me, and when I confronted her about it, she freaked out and told almost everyone we knew that I raped her to cover up her cheating. It was like she tried to destroy my life just to protect herself. The police arrested me during the investigation, but eventually, they released me because there wasn't any evidence. However, the damage was already done. My parents had already disowned me, and most of my friends stopped talking to me. I hadn't even been proven guilty, but my parents still believed I was a rapist who got away with it. It felt like I was completely on my own. The only person who stood by me was my best friend. He helped me in secret, knowing how badly things were going for me, but I couldn't stand staying in that environment. So I ran away. I didn't have anything to lose and no one to talk to. My college barred me from going to classes and would only send me work via email and let me come in just for exams. I decided to leave that town entirely and work some community jobs, trying to scrape together enough money to get a small apartment where I could live and start fresh. After a while, I realized that I couldn't stand looking at my own name anymore. Every time I saw it, it reminded me of everything that had happened. So I decided to change it. That was a small but meaningful step toward creating a new identity and distancing myself from my past. With that, I made some new friends and enrolled in university again. Looking back, I don't know why I did that because it just left me buried in debt and broke. But at the time, I thought maybe finishing my degree would help me rebuild my life. I pushed through and finally completed my degree in teaching. Once I did, I decided to move to a different country, far away on the other side of the world. I found a nice apartment and got a job as a teacher there. This new environment felt like a breath of fresh air, and I settled into my job, focusing on my students and trying to find my place in this new life. I eventually met a girl who turned out to be my now wife. Meeting her changed everything for me. She showed me kindness and love at a time when I still felt pretty damaged from my past. We took things slow, but eventually we moved in together, and she stood by my side through the ups and downs. We decided to get married, and she became a rock for me, giving me stability and a renewed sense of hope. When I first met my wife, I couldn't fully trust her. I was so used to being on guard that I would flinch if she even tried to touch me, or I'd start fidgeting when she'd get close. But slowly, she showed me how patient and understanding she could be, and I eventually fell head over heels for her. Sometime later, she gave birth to our twins, a daughter and a son. I adore those two, and I'd defend them to the edge of the universe. My wife's family welcomed me quickly despite me being a foreigner, and they treated me kindly. It made me remember what a loving family feels like. Now, I'm living happily in a nice house with my wife and kids, at least until last night. I was playing on my wife's PlayStation with our son, while she and our daughter were out in the garden. Out of nowhere, there's a knock on the door, and it's my father. He tried to speak to me, but I was too stunned. I slammed the door hard, scaring my son. I took him to his room and called my wife to bring our daughter inside. She was as shaken as I was. My father kept knocking, and I just broke down in that moment. My wife comforted me before answering the door herself. When she asked who he was, he said he was my father. My wife only knew a bit about my past, but she felt nothing but sorrow for me. She was furious and began yelling at my father for abandoning me. After she calmed down, I asked her to let him in, but to keep our kids busy in their room while I talked to him. He said he had been helping my ex-girlfriend clear some stuff from her phone and had stumbled upon messages between her and the guy she was cheating on me with. They were expressing guilt over ruining my life and how she wished she could take it all back. Hearing my father say that left me stunned. It brought back all the anger, confusion, and sadness I had been holding onto for so long. I wanted to believe him, but our relationship was so fractured. I listened, trying to process what he said, while my wife kept the kids entertained. I knew I had a lot to think about, but at least my father's words provided some closure to a chapter that had been left painfully unresolved. My father didn't confront my ex-girlfriend directly when he found out the truth because he wasn't ready to stir up old drama. Instead, he silently began searching for me to let me know that he believed me. I don't know how he found me, but I don't care because he's here now, and I need help figuring out what to do next. I've thought it over while walking through some random streets trying to clear my head, and I've considered my options. One option is to turn him away and tell him to go back to her country and leave me alone. Another is to reconcile with him and maybe even let my mother know, but honestly I don't know what the best decision is. I'm really stressed out and planning to take tomorrow off work to sort things out. My father is staying in an apartment nearby, so I'll probably go to him with my answer. I've got to follow my heart on this one, but I'm not sure I can ever fully trust any of them again. Now for the comments before reading the update. He said that he was doing my ex-girlfriend a favor by clearing some stuff on her phone. Is this not odd to you? 1. Why would he still have contact with her? 2. Why would he snoop on her phone? People just trying to help. Don't break into phones? This is a red flag. The man disowned you still has contact with a woman who ruined your life, found the truth by being a snoop, and somehow stalked you halfway across the globe. Is this the chaos you're ready to unleash on your family? You're right. Not much of it adds up. It's such a messy situation, and I hate being put in this position. I'm struggling to find the right words to say to him and answer everything. Oh, sweetie, this was really brutal. To hear people who make false allegations should be sued and jailed. It ruins people's lives. This was absolutely ridiculous. The best advice I can give is to keep him out of your life. He was so willing to dump you so fast without even spending enough time to talk it out with you. Not to mention you're already happy with the life that you have without them. Of course, you can choose to forgive whoever you want, but I wonder what his motive is in trying to reconcile. Best of luck, dear. Thanks for sharing your story. Thank you. I would like to go down the AI for AI route and just not let him go near my family. I'm not the most forgiving person in retrospect. He has to live with the consequences of his actions. Now for the updates. Update 1. Hi everyone. I'm sorry I haven't updated in a while, but I finally decided not to reconcile with my father. I just couldn't find it in myself to forgive him. Some of you might be curious about what happened. So here's the story. After my last post, I went to my father's hotel room and told him that I wouldn't reconcile or do anything like that. He had tears in his eyes, but understood. He explained that he had informed my mother about the truth and cut my ex-girlfriend out of the family completely. I asked why there was any contact with my ex in the first place, since many of you wondered the same thing. He said she felt too guilty to completely let go of the family. I'm not too inclined to believe that, but it's enough closure for me. Apparently my mother didn't handle the news well and tried to get my phone number, but my father didn't share it with her. It's hard to know what to trust, given that it could all be a ploy to get me back in their lives. After they threw me onto the streets like I was a rabid dog, it still makes me sick. My son asked who was at the door that night, but I just told him it was a colleague. I'll explain to both of my kids when they're older, or if they go through tough times themselves so they know I understand. We're all doing fine now. The whole thing shook me up, but I hope my father keeps his word and maintains my privacy. If anything changes, I'll keep you posted, but for now, I think this chapter is closed. Thank you all so much for your support and kind words. If you know someone who's gone through similar things as I have, stand by them. Never throw them onto the streets. I'll always be there for my kids, ensuring they're happy, even if it means moving across the world to do so. Final update. I was living peacefully before my father found me and kicked me off as a chain of events that led to this post. I recently had an incident with my family involving them breaking a promise and angered me incredibly, and after a lot of thought, I decided I would face them directly. I flew back to my home country and met with everybody involved, my mom, dad, brother, and even the girl who accused me. I was nervous, of course, but I was shocked when I realized I didn't really see them as family. I recognized them, of course, but I didn't see them the way that I see my wife, kids, and in-laws. My mother started by breaking into tears and trying to apologize. I just felt disgusted by it. My father comforted my mother, and my brother was the one who kept his composure and initiated conversation. He asked me how I was doing, and I responded by telling him to cut any small talk and that this meeting was on my terms. I told all of them that I was not looking for reconciliation, and I simply wanted closure. I made sure to tell them that I would call the police should they attempt to chase me. I asked my parents why they were so quick to abandon me, even though the police said that there was no proof. They said that they made a rash decision, and seeing me in custody broke their hearts. I called them out on it since they didn't try to stick up for me or anything. So I then asked what some people on my original post had said about my father looking through my accuser's phone. He said that she came to him to ask him to clear off her phone of non-essential staff, and that's when he saw the chat logs with her friends. My dad was always good with technology, so while it wasn't fulfilling, I accepted it. I then asked my brother why he never contacted me. He looked surprised and said that he did, but I just ignored him all the time. Turns out he was right. My brother had tried hundreds of times to contact me and give me money to get me off of rock bottom, but questioned why I never answered and assumed that I hated him because of what happened. Well, as it turns out, my mother had my contacts blocked on all of her phone plans as she paid for my brother's old phone plan, so couldn't even receive help when I was completely lost. Then the cherry on top was my ex. I first asked her why she actually did it. She said that she was scared of what would happen and that she never stopped loving me even throughout it all. Oh yeah, right? That's a funny way of showing it. She said that every session of therapy made her feel even more guilty as she knew it was all fake. She then told me that she hadn't dated anyone since, in hopes that I would come back and she could apologize because I'm sorry. Would really reverse time and fix all it apparently. Oh my goodness. Even that was a bunch of bullshit because my father said that he found chat logs of 3 different partners she had when I was away. My ex broke down crying and tried to hold my hand. She had the effing audacity to ask for another chance. This just made me spiteful, and I pulled out my phone and began showing all of them hundreds of pictures of my 2 children's milestones and good times my family had together, our visits to cities, their first day of school, both of them and my wife, in my arms. I told her that this was what she could have had if she wasn't so stupid and my parents what they missed out on for not even hearing me out. I had a moment when I thought that I had gone too far, but I realized compared to what they did to me, I hadn't. My visit wasn't all miserable though, as I met up with my old best friend and his family. They were happy to see me, and I was still grateful for them taking me in when it felt like the whole world was against me. A plan to return to the country someday, to show my kids where half of their culture comes from. I won't let them anywhere near my family though. As far as I'm concerned, my only family is my wife and her family and my kids. I'd say it went pretty well. Edit. As some of you asked, I have decided to allow my brother to fly over and meet his nephew and niece. I completely forgot to mention this in the post. Apologies. I hesitated at first as me and my brother weren't really on great terms growing up. Brotherly rivalry and all that. Story 2. My friend told my boyfriend that we were having an affair but we're not. Boyfriend doesn't believe me. Let me start by saying that I fully understand how tricky and messy this situation is. I get why my boyfriend would be upset and even suspicious, but it's still shocking to me that he doesn't trust me. I mean, I guess it makes sense that he'd be suspicious after all that's happened, but still, it's tough. So I've been with my boyfriend Paul for 3 years now. We've had a lot of great times together and honestly, I really love him. But when we first started dating, he had major trust issues. You see, he'd been in relationships before where he got cheated on and that left him pretty scarred. I knew he was dealing with a lot from those past experiences, so I wanted to reassure him that I would never do anything to hurt him. I was very clear from the beginning that I've never cheated on anyone and never would. I also told him that I understood why he had trust issues given his past, and that I'd do my best to help him feel secure with me. But at the same time, I made it known that being with someone who couldn't trust me was a deal breaker. I'm not comfortable in a relationship where someone's constantly suspicious or looking over my shoulder. In those early days, things were pretty rocky. He struggled with trust a lot, but over time, it got better. I made sure to be totally open with him, and I think my actions spoke for themselves. I'd always been honest with him, never cheated, and always kept him in the loop about my life. Because of that, I felt like I'd earned his trust throughout our 3 years together. But there were still moments when he felt insecure. Twice during our relationship, he asked to see the conversations I was having with my male friends. I could tell he was worried, so I obliged both times. I wanted to ease his concerns because I knew his fears came from a place of insecurity, not because he actually thought I was cheating. The second time, though, I made it clear that I was really unhappy about being treated like I was up to something shady. It felt like he didn't trust me, and that he thought I didn't deserve privacy with my friends. I understood his past, but it still wasn't fair. I told him that if he didn't trust me because of something specific I'd said or done, then I was totally willing to sit down and have a conversation about it so we could work through any issues together. But I also made it clear that if I hadn't done anything at all to make him suspicious, then I expected him to trust me. Trust is a two-way street, and without it, a relationship just can't function properly. Paul listened to what I had to say and seemed to understand. He agreed with me that I hadn't done anything wrong and apologized for making me feel like he didn't trust me. He promised not to ask again unless there was a real reason for concern, and since then we haven't had that issue come up again. Despite all that, though, it feels like we're still not fully out of the woods when it comes to trust. While he's gotten better about it, I can't help but think there's still some lingering suspicion in the back of his mind that he's not fully sharing with me. It's tough because I want to believe we're in a good place, but sometimes I catch little hints that he's still holding on to some of that old insecurity. One of the conversations Paul wanted to see was one I had with my friend Roger. Now, Roger confessed he was in love with me 2 years before I even started dating Paul. I told him at the time that I wasn't interested in him like that, and that was that. By the time I was in a relationship with Paul, I had no reason to think there was anything but a friendly vibe between Roger and me. We'd meet occasionally, just as friends. A week ago, Roger and I decided to grab coffee. I want to make it really clear that before this meetup, I never thought for a second that Roger had hung on to his feelings for me. At the cafe, we were just chatting as usual when suddenly, out of the blue, Roger launched into this big speech about how much he still loved me and how Paul was a terrible boyfriend. He told me I should break up with Paul and be with him instead. He went on and on about how loyal he was to me and how perfect we'd be together. Honestly, I was stunned and felt super uncomfortable. I just sat there silently while he kept talking because I was totally caught off guard. When he finally stopped, I told him, probably not as firmly as I should have because I was shocked and confused, that I loved Paul and there was no way I was leaving him. I told Roger I needed to leave right away and go home. I felt shaken up by the whole encounter, so I took some time to calm down before heading home. When I finally got home, I was horrified to find that Roger had sent this long, completely insane message to Paul on Facebook. He talked about how much he loved me and how he believed we were meant to be together. He heavily implied that we had been carrying on an affair for weeks, though he didn't outright say it. It was a mess, and I had no clue why he did this or what was going through his head. Paul saw the message and believed it completely. I tried to explain everything to him, but he just thought I was lying. He didn't want to see me or even talk to me anymore. He told me our relationship was over. I was devastated that he would believe Roger's Facebook message over my own words. I couldn't believe our relationship was ending like this. Not only that, but I'm so embarrassed because now people are going to see me as a cheater, someone who was unfaithful to Paul. I'm furious at Roger for what he did. It's been a week since this all happened, and I've tried everything I can to get Paul to talk to me, but he's not budging. He won't listen to a word I say. I know he's had trust issues before, but I thought we'd gotten past that a long time ago. What do I do? Additional information from Opie. When you told you can't be friends with someone after they tell you I love you, I definitely hear when you're saying, but I just want to point out, I never believed feelings would magically evaporate. Roger said he loved me 5 years ago. We were distant from each other for about a year after he told me he loved me, then reconnected through mutual friends and were friends for a year before I dated Paul. During that year, he acted totally platonically around me, and I guess I thought he had enough time to get over his feelings. He's been totally platonic as well for the 3 years that I've been with Paul. Obviously I was wrong, and you were right about how I should have cut him out, but I didn't think the feelings would just disappear. I thought the year we weren't really in contact had made them go away. However, Paul already has heard the whole and complete story, including what Roger said 5 years ago. He thinks I'm lying. However, when I say there is nothing between Roger and I now, should I still push the issue with Paul and try and make him talk to me? He's heard everything already. He just refuses to believe me. Sorry to hear that. It's a tough situation. Now for the update. I want to thank everyone so much for commenting before I post what happened. I just want to address a few things that I didn't get to in the first post. First, Paul knew I was having coffee with Roger. It wasn't some kind of secret thing. Paul has female friends. He has lunch or coffee with alone too. So this isn't unusual in our relationship. Second, Paul did not know that Roger had said that he loved me 5 years ago. I definitely made a mistake not telling him that. But honestly, it was so long ago, and to my obviously wrong knowledge was old history. We did not extensively discuss her past. So there wasn't really a natural point where it would have come up, and it just never occurred to me to say anything. Finally, Roger and I did not have a particularly intense friendship. It was not like we were texting constantly or best buddies. We hung out occasionally, and we would be in touch if something relevant came up, but we just didn't chat randomly. Anyway, with that having been said, I took the advice of some Redditors. And when I was a little calmer, I Facebook messaged. Roger asked him why he lied. He responded with, "What do you mean?" At which point I started pressing him harder. He responded with only one-word answers and honestly didn't reply to the most of my messages at all. No matter how much I asked and never actually said any definitive statement of yes, I lied for such and such reason. Finally, I sent him a definitive statement that I said that I never had an affair with him, that I was incredibly hurt and angry, but our friendship was over and that he was never to contact me again. He replied, "Okay," and that was that. I sent the entire Facebook conversation to Paul, not thinking it would help save us, but just try to clear my name. In my message, I asked him if Roger's reactions to my questions, and my response to Roger was in line with what he would expect if Roger's accusations were true. Paul didn't respond that day, but the next day he called me. Paul basically said that the more he thought about it, the more he believed me, and that the conversation between Roger and I helped him believe that Roger's responses didn't make sense, and that he now thought nothing had gone on. However, he said despite that, the trust was broken between us, and he couldn't be with me. I got pretty mad and yelled at him, asking why I was being punished for nothing, and he just basically disengaged from the discussion. Not my finest moment, I know, but I was just so overwhelmed with frustration. We did eventually end the conversation calmly, if not amiably, and he is dropping off the stuff that I left at his apartment later this week. I learned my lesson. Not only will any declaration of interest by a friend in that friendship forever, but I will never date someone who has trust issues or a history of being cheated on again. I'm sure I come across as a little bitter about this, but honestly, I feel like there was absolutely no point to my fidelity and honesty during those 3 years. I got treated like a cheater, and whether or not I cheated, and both Paul and I ended up hurt and alone despite being 100% faithful. Better to end up alone or stick with an FWB than end up investing another 3 years in a relationship to have this be the conclusion. Story 3. In my day hole for being truthful with my friends when telling them that I won't go on a weekend away because I don't want to talk about marriage and babies for 3 days. I, 27 female, have a group of female friends, 8 of us. We have been friends for over a decade since school. Now we don't live in the same place. We meet up a couple of times a year for a weekend in an Airbnb. This used to be a weekend. Good food, drinks, hot tub, etc. I am content with my life at the moment. I am single dating and I don't know if I would like children, but in the event that I did know I wouldn't want one. Sin. Around 5 of my friends are either married or in very long-term relationships. Are these 5 to either have a baby or are pregnant? I will be seeing all of my friends this year for various weddings, friend baby events. I have been invited on this year's girls' trip. I have said I can't come. I didn't originally provide a reason when questioned in person by my friend who is pregnant. I told her the truth. I'm not going because it's a massive financial expense for 3 days where we only talk about people's upcoming engagements, weddings, babies. I have a lot going on, but I feel a lot of my friends do not show an interest unless I talk about someone that I'm dating. I also last time listened to one of my friends talk about her breastfeeding plans with vengeance for over an hour. She is not pregnant or trying. Truthfully, it's boring and it feels dismissive. It's also a really expensive way to feel bad about myself. I made it clear when telling my friend this that I'm thrilled for them still living the lives that they want, but maybe it's not the weekend for me at the moment, meaning it feels like the group has 2 distinct life stages. I'm in the minority and it focuses on one stage. My friend has since told me that she's really hurt, that I'm not excited for her or her other friends. I responded saying that I evidently was from other actions, but I just didn't think the trip was for me. I do have numerous other things going on, and to fit this in both the calendar and financially is a struggle. I just want to add for this friend specifically that I have gone on 3 weekends away for her wedding, and I'm flying to go to her baby shower all in the last 2 years. I have not asked her, nor has she wanted to fly to see me for anything in the last 2 years. So my query is, am I the a-hole for being truthful with the reason why I can't go? I probably just would have said that it's too expensive and I don't have the time to go, and just left it at that. But I don't think you're the a-hole though.